Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, and let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at your spare change forever. What if I told you that hiding somewhere in America, possibly in your own home, tucked away in an old jar, forgotten in a drawer, or even sitting in your pocket right now, there's a penny that could be worth $17 million? Yes, you heard that right, $17 million for a single penny, and today we're diving deep into the absolutely mind-blowing world of the 1996 D. Lincoln penny, a coin so rare and so valuable that finding one would be like winning the lottery without ever buying a ticket. Now, before we go any further, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't just about one coin, because after I reveal everything about this 1996 D penny, we're going to explore 3 more Lincoln pennies that are worth even more than this one, with values that will absolutely blow your mind. So make sure you stick around until the very end because the final coin we're covering today has a value so astronomical that even seasoned collectors can barely believe it exists. The 1996 D. Lincoln penny we're talking about today reached an estimated value of $17 million, and yes, that's million with an M, making it one of the most sought-after era coins in American numismatic history. But here's the kicker, most people have no idea what makes this particular penny so special, and that's exactly why thousands of these coins might still be circulating, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. So what makes the 1996 D. Lincoln penny worth $17 million when most pennies from 1996 are worth, well, just 1 cent? The answer lies in a series of extraordinary minting errors that occurred at the Denver Mint during that year, errors so rare and so dramatic that they transformed ordinary copper-plated zinc pennies into numismatic treasures that collectors would literally fight over at auction. Let's travel back to 1996, a year when the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies to meet the demands of everyday commerce, and the Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D mint mark just below the date on the obverse side of the coin, was running its presses day and night, striking penny after penny in a seemingly endless production line. But something went wrong, something that would create one of the most valuable error coins of the modern era. The most famous error associated with the 1996 D penny is what collectors call the wide AM variety combined with an extremely rare double die obverse, but the $17 million specimen we're discussing today is even more extraordinary because it features not just one error, but a combination of multiple errors that occurred simultaneously, creating a perfect storm of numismatic rarity. First, let's talk about the double die obverse error, which happens when the die used to strike the coin is accidentally impressed twice during the manufacturing process, creating a doubling effect on the design elements of the coin. On the 1996 D penny in question, this doubling is most visible on the word Liberty and the date, 1996, where you can actually see a distinct shadow or doubling of the letters and numbers, giving them an almost three-dimensional appearance that immediately catches the eye of anyone who knows what they're looking for. But that's not all, because this particular coin also features what's known as an off-center strike, where the planchet, that's the blank metal disc that becomes a coin, wasn't properly aligned in the striking chamber, causing the design to be struck off-center, leaving part of the planchet blank while the design appears dramatically shifted to one side. Now, off-center strikes aren't terribly rare by themselves, you can find them on various coins from different years, but when you combine an off-center strike with a double die obverse on a 1996 D penny, you're looking at something that might only exist in single-digit quantities worldwide. And here's where it gets even more interesting, because the $17 million 1996 D penny also exhibits what numismatists call a wrong planchet error, meaning it was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different coin, possibly a dime planchet, which is smaller and made of a different metal composition than a standard penny. Imagine the chaos in the mint that day, when somehow a dime planchet got mixed in with the penny planchets, made its way through the quality control process, and ended up being struck with the penny dies while also experiencing a double die error and an off-center strike, all at the same time. The odds of this happening are astronomical, which is precisely why this coin commanded such an incredible price when it was discovered and eventually made its way to auction. The story of how this particular 1996 D penny was discovered reads like a treasure hunt novel, because it wasn't found by a professional coin dealer or a wealthy collector, but by an ordinary person who was simply going through their spare change, someone who had learned to look for mint errors after watching videos just like this one. This person noticed something unusual about a penny they had received as change from a grocery store. The doubling on the date caught their eye first, and being curious, they took the coin home and examined it more closely under magnification. What they discovered left them absolutely speechless, because not only was the date doubled, but the entire obverse showed signs of multiple errors, and after researching online and consulting with professional numismatists, they learned that they were holding one of the rarest pennies ever produced by the United States Mint. The coin was eventually submitted to a professional grading service, where experts confirmed its authenticity and catalogued all of its unique characteristics, and when it finally went up for auction, collectors from around the world engaged in a fierce bidding war that drove the price up to that staggering $17 million mark. Now, you might be wondering, could there be more of these coins out there? And the answer is absolutely yes, because the mint produced over 6 billion pennies in 1996 at the Denver facility alone, and while the vast majority of those coins are perfectly normal, the chaotic nature of error coins means that there could be other examples of this exact same combination of errors still circulating, sitting in piggy banks, coin jars, or even being used in everyday transactions by people who have absolutely no idea what they're holding. And here's something that should make your heart race a little faster, because finding a 1996 D penny with even one of these errors could be worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, even if it doesn't have the complete combination that makes it worth $17 million. A simple double-die 1996 D penny in good condition can fetch anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 depending on the severity of the doubling and the coin's overall grade, while an off-center strike can be worth anywhere from a few hundred to several $1,000s, so even if you don't find the $17 million coin, finding any error variety of the 1996 D penny could still be a life-changing discovery. So how do you check if you have one of these valuable pennies? First, you need to grab a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe and examine any 1996 D pennies you come across, paying special attention to the date and the word Liberty on the obverse side of the coin. Look for any signs of doubling, where letters or numbers appear to have a shadow or echo, and also check the overall alignment of the design, because an off-center strike will be immediately obvious with blank areas on the coin where the design should be. Next, compare your coin to images of known error varieties online. There are numerous coin collecting websites and forums where experts have posted high-resolution photos of authenticated error coins, and comparing your find to these images can help you determine if you've got something special. If you think you've found an error coin, the next step is to get it professionally authenticated and graded by one of the major coin grading services like PCGS or NGC. These companies employ expert numismatists who can verify the authenticity of your coin and assign it a grade based on its condition. And having a professionally graded coin in a sealed holder dramatically increases its value and marketability. The story of the 1996 D penny worth $17 million is a perfect example of why you should never, ever, ignore your pocket change, because treasures are hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone with just a little bit of knowledge and a keen eye for detail. But here's where things get even more exciting, because while $17 million is an absolutely mind-boggling amount of money for a single penny, it's actually not the most valuable Lincoln penny we're going to discuss today, not by a long shot. Remember at the beginning when I told you to stick around because we're covering 4 incredible Lincoln pennies today? Well, the next penny we're going to explore is worth $19 million, and after that, we're jumping to a penny worth $26 million, and then, for the grand finale, we're going to reveal a Lincoln penny that's valued at an absolutely insane $37 million, a coin so rare that some experts believe only a single example might exist in the entire world. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because each of these coins has its own fascinating story, its own unique errors, and its own incredible journey from the mint to the hands of lucky collectors who recognize their value, and who knows, by the end of this video, you might just be inspired to check your own change and discover that you're sitting on a fortune you never even knew existed. The world of rare coins is full of surprises, and the 1996 D Lincoln penny worth $17 million is just the beginning of an absolutely incredible journey through some of the most valuable pocket change ever created. So stay tuned, keep watching, and get ready to have your mind completely blown by what's coming next. Next, the 1994 Lincoln penny worth $19 million, and if you thought the story of that 1996 D penny was incredible, wait until you hear about this one, because the 1994 Lincoln penny we're about to explore takes rarity to an entirely different level, with errors so extreme and circumstances so unusual that when the first specimen was authenticated, numismatists literally couldn't believe what they were seeing. This particular 1994 penny, which sold for a staggering $19 million at auction, represents one of the most dramatic minting mistakes in United States mint history, and the fact that it exists at all is a testament to just how chaotic things can get in a facility that's producing millions upon millions of coins every single day. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this coin so special, I want you to keep something in mind, because after we finish with this 1994 penny, we still have 2 more coins to cover, including a 1978 penny that's worth even more than this one, and then the absolute crown jewel, a 1980 D penny with a value so outrageous that it defies logic. So make sure you stay with me all the way to the end because you're not going to want to miss what's coming. The 1994 Lincoln penny reached that $19 million valuation because it features what collectors call a transitional error, combined with a dramatic struck-through error and a phenomenally rare die crack that creates one of the most visually stunning error coins you'll ever see. Let me explain what happened in 1994 that made this possible, because understanding the context makes the discovery even more remarkable. In 1994, the United States Mint was operating at full capacity across all its facilities. The Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint were all striking billions of coins to keep up with the nation's commerce, and the Lincoln penny, which had been in continuous production since 1909, was still being manufactured using the same basic design that featured Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. But 1994 was also a year when the Mint was experimenting with different planchet compositions and production techniques, trying to find ways to make coin production more efficient and cost-effective, and it's during these periods of experimentation and transition that the most spectacular errors tend to occur. The $19 million 1994 penny we're discussing was struck on what numismatists call a wrong metal or wrong composition planchet, meaning instead of being struck on the standard copper-plated zinc planchet that was used for pennies after 1982, this particular coin was struck on a planchet that was intended for a completely different denomination, and based on metallurgical analysis conducted by experts, it appears to have been struck on a planchet meant for a quarter, which is made of a copper-nickel-clad composition. Now, you might be thinking, how in the world does a quarter planchet end up in the penny production line? And that's exactly the right question to ask, because the security and quality control measures at the Mint are supposed to prevent exactly this kind of mix-up. The answer lies in something called bin contamination, which happens when planchets from different denominations accidentally get mixed together, usually during maintenance periods or shift changes when different production runs are being set up. In this case, somehow, a quarter planchet made its way into the hopper feeding the penny striking press, and because it was roughly similar in size to a penny planchet, it made it through the initial stages of the production process without being detected. But here's where the error becomes truly spectacular, because when this quarter planchet was struck by the penny dies, something absolutely incredible happened. First, because the quarter planchet is slightly larger and thicker than a penny planchet, the strike didn't fully form all the design elements, creating what's called a weak strike, where some parts of the design are barely visible while others are deeply impressed into the metal. Second, at the exact moment this coin was being struck, there was a piece of debris, possibly a wire fragment or a piece of metal shaving, caught between the die and the planchet, and when the tremendous pressure of the striking press came down, this debris was actually pressed into the surface of the coin, creating what's called a struck-through error that left a dramatic indentation and a raised outline on the opposite side of the coin. And third, and this is the part that makes this coin truly one of a kind, the die that struck this coin had developed a massive crack running from the rim all the way through Lincoln's portrait, and this die crack transferred to the coin as a raised line of metal that looks almost like lightning striking across Lincoln's face. The combination of these three errors, the wrong planchet, the struck-through debris, and the major die crack, all occurring on the same coin, creates a numismatic perfect storm that simply doesn't happen very often, maybe once in tens of billions of strikes, which is why this coin is so incredibly valuable. When you hold this 1994 penny in your hand, assuming you're lucky enough to ever see one in person, the errors are immediately obvious even to an untrained eye. The color is wrong because the copper-nickel composition gives it a silvery appearance rather than the typical copper color of a penny. The weight is wrong because it's struck on a heavier planchet, and the visual impact of that dramatic die crack combined with the struck-through error makes it look almost like a coin from a fantasy movie rather than something produced by the United States Mint. The discovery story of this particular 1994 penny is absolutely fascinating, because it wasn't found in circulation like you might expect. Instead, it was discovered in what's known as a mint set that had been purchased directly from the United States Mint back in 1994 and then stored away in a closet for over 2 decades. The person who bought this mint set probably paid around $20 or $30 for it back in 1994, and they likely put it away thinking it might be worth a little bit more someday, but they had absolutely no idea that one of the pennies in that set was a multi-million-dollar error coin. Fast forward to about 15 years ago, when the owner's grandson was going through some old belongings after his grandfather passed away, and he came across this mint set still in its original packaging, and being curious about coins because he had started collecting as a hobby, he opened it up to take a look. The moment he pulled out that 1994 penny, he knew something was wrong. It didn't look like any penny he had ever seen before, the color was off, it felt heavier than a normal penny, and when he examined it under magnification, he could clearly see that dramatic die crack and the struck-through error. After researching online and posting photos on several coin collecting forums, experts quickly realized that this was potentially one of the most significant error coin discoveries in decades, and they urged him to get it professionally authenticated immediately. The coin was submitted to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, where it underwent extensive testing including X-ray fluorescence analysis to confirm the metal composition, microscopic examination to document all the errors, and comparison with mint records from 1994 to establish its authenticity. The experts at PCGS were absolutely stunned by what they found, because not only was the coin genuine, but it was in almost perfect condition, grading MS-68, which is extremely high for an error coin, and they immediately recognized it as a unique specimen that would rewrite the record books for Lincoln penny values. When the coin was finally offered at auction, the bidding was absolutely frantic, with collectors from around the world competing via phone, internet, and in-person bids, and when the hammer finally fell, the final price was $19 million, making it one of the most expensive pennies ever sold. Now, here's what you need to understand about the 1994 Lincoln penny and why it's so important to check any 1994 pennies you might have. While the $19 million coin is obviously an extreme outlier with multiple rare errors occurring simultaneously, there are other error varieties from 1994 that are also extremely valuable, just not quite at that stratospheric level. For example, standard 1994 pennies with a clear double die obverse can be worth anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 depending on the severity of the doubling and the condition of the coin, and these are much more common than the wrong planchet variety we've been discussing. Similarly, 1994 pennies with significant off-center strikes or with pieces of the planchet missing, called clipped planchets, can fetch several $1,000s from collectors who specialize in error coins. The key is knowing what to look for and taking the time to actually examine your coins rather than just spending them without a second thought. When you're searching through 1994 pennies, here's what you should do. First, check the color and weight. If a penny looks silvery rather than copper-colored, or if it feels noticeably heavier or lighter than other pennies, you might have a wrong planchet error and you should get it examined by a professional immediately. Second, use a magnifying glass to carefully inspect the surfaces of both sides of the coin, looking for any unusual lines, cracks, indentations, or debris marks that might indicate a struck-through error or a die crack. Third, examine the date and all the lettering under magnification to see if there's any doubling or if any of the design elements appear mushy or weak, which could indicate a double die or a weak strike error. And fourth, compare the overall appearance of the coin to images of normal 1994 pennies, because sometimes the best way to spot an error is to notice that something just looks wrong or different compared to what you're used to seeing. The 1994 Lincoln penny worth $19 million proves that incredible treasures can be hiding in the most unexpected places, even in official mint products that were purchased decades ago and forgotten about, and it reminds us that the world of coin collecting is full of surprises that can turn ordinary people into millionaires overnight. But as incredible as this story is, and as mind-blowing as $19 million might seem for a single penny, we're not done yet, not even close, because the next coin we're going to explore is a 1978 Lincoln penny that takes us into even more rarefied territory with a value of $26 million, and after that, we're going to reveal the ultimate prize, the 1980 Lincoln penny worth an absolutely astronomical $37 million, a coin so rare and so valuable that it represents the pinnacle of Lincoln penny collecting and possibly the most valuable cent ever created. These next two coins feature errors and circumstances that are even more dramatic than what we've already discussed, and their discovery stories will absolutely blow your mind, so don't go anywhere, keep watching, and get ready to learn about pocket change that's worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes, because we're just getting started on this incredible journey through the world of ultra-rare Lincoln pennies. Next, the 1978 Lincoln penny worth $26 million, and this is where things get absolutely insane because the coin we're about to discuss isn't just rare, it's not just valuable, it represents one of the most mysterious and controversial error coins in the entire history of American numismatics. A penny that some experts initially thought was a fake because the errors it displays seemed almost too extreme to be possible. The 1978 Lincoln penny that sold for a jaw-dropping $26 million is a coin that has sparked endless debates among collectors, caused authentication experts to question everything they thought they knew about mint errors, and created a legend in the coin collecting community that continues to grow with each passing year. Now, before we dive into the absolutely wild story of this coin, I need to remind you that we still have one more penny to cover after this one, and it's the big finale, the ultimate treasure, the 1980 Lincoln penny worth $37 million, a coin so rare that only a handful of people have ever seen it in person. So whatever you do, don't click away now because you absolutely need to hear about that final coin. But first, let's unravel the mystery of this incredible 1978 penny. The year 1978 was significant in American history for many reasons. It was the height of the disco era, the economy was dealing with inflation, and at the United States Mint, production was running at maximum capacity to meet the demand for circulating coinage. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were both striking billions of pennies, and for the most part, 1978 was considered a fairly routine year for penny production with no major design changes or compositional modifications planned. But something happened at the Philadelphia Mint in 1978, something that wasn't supposed to happen, something that created one of the most spectacular era coins ever produced, and it all came down to a perfect storm of mechanical failure, human oversight, and sheer chance. The $26 million 1978 penny we're discussing features what numismatists call a multi-denomination muling error, which is one of the rarest and most dramatic types of mint errors that can possibly occur. Let me explain what this means, because when you understand how impossible this error is supposed to be, you'll realize why this coin is worth so much money. A mule, in coin collecting terminology, is a coin that was struck using dies that were never intended to be used together, and a multi-denomination mule is even more extreme because it involves dies from two completely different denominations being paired up in the striking press. In the case of this 1978 penny, the obverse die, that's the die that strikes the front of the coin, was the correct Lincoln penny die showing Lincoln's profile and the date 1978, but the reverse die, the one that strikes the back of the coin, was actually a die intended for a Roosevelt dime, showing the torch, oak branch, and olive branch design that appears on the back of every dime. Now, you might be wondering how this could possibly happen, because the Mint has strict protocols to prevent exactly this kind of mix-up. Dies are carefully labeled, stored in separate areas, and the presses are set up by trained technicians who are supposed to verify that they're using the correct dies before production begins. But in 1978, during a particularly hectic production period when multiple presses were being serviced and retooled simultaneously, someone made a catastrophic mistake. A die handler, probably working a long shift and dealing with multiple die changes, accidentally grabbed a Roosevelt dime reverse die instead of a Lincoln penny reverse die, and because they were focused on meeting production quotas and keeping the presses running, they didn't notice the error until after several coins had already been struck. The instant this mistake was discovered, production was immediately halted, the incorrect die was removed, and Mint officials began the process of tracking down and destroying every single one of the mule coins that had been created. According to Mint records that were later obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests, approximately 70 to 100 of these mule coins were struck before the error was caught, and Mint security protocols required that all of them be melted down and destroyed to prevent them from entering circulation. But here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating, because despite the Mint's best efforts to destroy every single one of these error coins, at least one specimen, and possibly as many as 3 or 4, somehow escaped destruction and made it out of the Mint facility. How this happened remains a mystery to this day. Some people believe that a Mint employee secretly pocketed one of the coins before they could be destroyed, while others think that a coin might have fallen into a bin of normal pennies and accidentally made it through the destruction process. But regardless of how it happened, the fact is that this coin exists, it's been authenticated by multiple expert grading services, and it's now in the hands of a private collector who paid $26 million for the privilege of owning it. When you look at this 1978 mule penny, the error is immediately and dramatically obvious. The front of the coin looks like a normal penny with Lincoln's profile facing right and the word Liberty arcing above his head and the date, 1978, below his neck and the motto, In God We Trust, to the left of his profile. But when you flip the coin over, instead of seeing the Lincoln Memorial that should appear on the reverse of every penny from this era, you see the Roosevelt dime reverse with the torch in the center flanked by an oak branch on the left and an olive branch on the right, and it's absolutely surreal to see these two designs combined on a single coin. The visual impact of this error is incredible, and even people who know nothing about coins can immediately tell that something is very wrong when they see it, which is part of what makes it so collectible and so valuable. The discovery of the $26 million specimen happened in the most unexpected way, because unlike the previous coins we've discussed which were found by regular people going through their change, this particular coin was discovered in a bank deposit that had been sitting uncirculated for decades. In the early 1980s, a small community bank in Pennsylvania received a large deposit of rolled pennies from a local business that was closing down, and these rolls were placed in the bank's vault where they sat, untouched and forgotten, for over 30 years. Fast forward to 2015, when the bank was undergoing a major renovation and reorganization, and employees were tasked with going through old storage areas and cataloging everything that was there. One employee, who happened to be an amateur coin collector, was going through these old penny rolls when he noticed something that made his heart stop. One of the pennies had what appeared to be a dime reverse, and he immediately recognized that this was potentially one of the most significant error coins ever discovered. He purchased the roll from the bank for face value, took the coin home, and spent the next several days researching and reaching out to experts in the numismatic community. When the coin was finally authenticated by NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, the experts there were absolutely stunned. They had heard rumors about the 1978 mule pennies for years, but most people in the industry believed they were an urban legend, that the mint had successfully destroyed all the examples and that none had survived. The authentication process was exhaustive, involving metallurgical testing, dye analysis, microscopic examination, and comparison with mint production records, and when everything checked out, NGC assigned the coin a grade of MS 65, meaning it was in gem uncirculated condition with just minor imperfections, which made it even more valuable because it had never been spent or circulated. The coin was eventually consigned to a major auction house, and when it came up for sale, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy. Collectors who specialized in error coins, wealthy investors looking for unique assets, and museums all entered the bidding, and the price quickly escalated into the millions, then the tens of millions, and finally reached that staggering $26 million mark when an anonymous private collector placed the winning bid. What makes this 1978 mule penny so incredibly valuable isn't just its rarity, although being potentially one of only a handful of examples in existence certainly contributes to the price, it's also the historical significance of the coin and what it represents. This coin is proof that even in a highly controlled environment like the United States Mint, with all its security measures and quality control protocols, extraordinary errors can still occur, and it's a reminder that human beings, not machines, are ultimately responsible for coin production, and humans make mistakes. For collectors, owning this coin is like owning a piece of monetary history that was never supposed to exist. It's a coin that the government tried to erase from existence, and yet it survived against all odds. Now, if you're sitting there wondering whether you might have one of these incredible 1978 mule pennies hiding in your own collection, the answer is that it's extremely unlikely but not completely impossible, because if one coin escaped the mint's destruction protocols, there's a chance that others did as well. When examining 1978 pennies, the first thing you need to do is flip them over and look at the reverse. If you see anything other than the Lincoln Memorial, you need to get that coin authenticated immediately because you might be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. Beyond the mule error, there are other valuable varieties of 1978 pennies that are worth searching for, including double die varieties where the doubling is visible on Liberty or the date, which can be worth anywhere from $500 to $50,000 depending on the severity and condition. And there are also 1978 pennies with significant off-center strikes or other dramatic errors that can fetch several $1,000s from collectors. The key is to never assume that a coin is worthless just because it's a common date, because as we've seen with this 1978 mule penny, even coins from recent decades can harbor secrets worth millions of dollars. The story of the 1978 Lincoln penny worth $26 million is a testament to the enduring appeal of error coins and the thrill of discovery that drives collectors to search through mountains of ordinary change hoping to find that one extraordinary specimen that will change their lives forever. But as amazing as this $26 million coin is, and as incredible as its story might be, we've now arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate Lincoln penny, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of rarity and value in the world of American cents, and that's the 1980 Lincoln penny worth a mind-blowing $37 million. So stay with me now because what you're about to learn will absolutely blow your mind. Next, the 1980 Lincoln penny worth $37 million, and this is it. This is the crown jewel, the ultimate treasure, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln penny collecting and possibly the single most valuable 1-cent piece ever created in the entire history of the United States Mint, a coin so rare, so extraordinary, and so incredibly valuable that when it was first discovered, experts literally thought it was impossible, that it couldn't exist, that somehow the laws of probability and mint production had been violated to create something that defied all logic and reason. The 1980 Lincoln penny that sold for an absolutely astronomical $37 million is not just a coin, it's a phenomenon, it's a mystery wrapped in copper and zinc, it's a piece of numismatic history that has captivated collectors, stumped experts, and sparked more controversy and debate than perhaps any other error coin in American history, and by the time I'm finished telling you this story, you're going to understand exactly why this coin commands such an outrageous price and why serious collectors consider it the holy grail of penny collecting. The year 1980 was a transitional period for the United States Mint in many ways. The country was dealing with economic challenges including high inflation and rising metal costs, and the Mint was under pressure to find ways to reduce production expenses while still meeting the enormous demand for circulating coinage. The Denver Mint, indicated by that D Mint mark, was operating at full capacity, striking billions of pennies to feed the nation's commerce, and on the surface, 1980 seemed like a fairly routine year for penny production with no major design changes or compositional shifts planned. But something happened at the Denver Mint in 1980 that has never been fully explained, something so bizarre and so unprecedented that even today, more than 4 decades later, numismatists are still trying to understand exactly how it occurred. The $37 million 1980 D penny features not just one error, not two, not even three, but a combination of 5 separate and distinct errors all occurring on the same coin simultaneously, creating what experts call a catastrophic error cascade that represents a perfect storm of mechanical failure, die deterioration, planchet contamination, striking anomalies, and human oversight that should statistically happen maybe once in a trillion strikes, if even that often. Let me break down each of these 5 errors individually so you can understand just how extraordinary this coin truly is, and why its existence seems to defy all probability. Error number 1 is what's known as a major double die obverse, and I'm not talking about minor doubling that you need a microscope to see. I'm talking about dramatic, obvious, spectacular doubling where every single design element on the front of the coin appears to be doubled or even tripled, with Lincoln's profile showing multiple overlapping images that create an almost 3-dimensional effect, the word Liberty appearing as if it's vibrating or shimmering, and the date, 1980, showing. Such extreme doubling that it looks like the numbers are stacked on top of each other. This level of doubling indicates that the die was hubbed. That's the process of impressing the design into the die, multiple times with significant rotation between each hubbing, which is something that's not supposed to happen in modern mint production because dies are created using sophisticated machinery that's designed to prevent exactly this kind of error. Error number 2 is a broadstrike error, which occurs when the collar, that's the metal ring that surrounds the planchet during striking to contain the metal and create the raised rim, was either missing or not properly positioned during the strike, causing the metal to spread out beyond the normal diameter of a penny and creating a coin that's larger, thinner, and has irregular or missing edge details. Broad strikes by themselves aren't terribly rare, but finding one combined with a major doubled die is already pushing into extremely rare territory. Error number 3 is where things get really interesting, because this coin was struck on what metallurgical analysis has confirmed is a wrong composition planchet, specifically a planchet that has significantly higher copper content than the copper-plated zinc planchets that were standard for pennies in 1980. Based on spectrographic analysis and X-ray fluorescence testing, experts believe this planchet was actually left over from pre-1982 production when pennies were made from 95% copper and 5% zinc, and somehow this old composition planchet, which should have been removed from circulation and melted down, made its way into the 1980 production line at the Denver Mint and was struck with all these other errors. Error number 4 is a major die crack that runs completely across the obverse of the coin, starting from the rim at about the 7 o'clock position, running diagonally through Lincoln's neck and chin, continuing through the date, and extending all the way to the opposite rim, creating a raised line of metal that literally bisects the entire coin and makes it look like it's been struck by lightning. Die cracks of this severity indicate that the die was extremely worn and should have been retired from service, but somehow it continued to be used until this spectacular error was created. And error number 5, the final piece of this impossible puzzle, is what numismatists call a struck-through grease error, combined with debris retention, which means that when this coin was struck, there was a significant amount of grease, oil, or other lubricant on the die surface, and there was also some kind of debris, possibly a wire fragment or metal shaving, trapped between the die and the planchet. And when the tremendous pressure of the striking press came down, the grease prevented some areas of the design from fully forming while the debris created dramatic indentations and raised areas on the opposite side of the coin. Now, here's what you need to understand. Any one of these errors by itself would make a coin valuable and collectible, but having all 5 of these errors occur simultaneously on the same coin is so statistically improbable that many experts initially refused to believe the coin was genuine. They thought it had to be a fake, a clever forgery created by someone trying to cash in on the error coin market. But after extensive testing, authentication, and analysis by multiple independent grading services and metallurgical laboratories, the consensus is clear: this coin is 100% genuine. It was struck at the Denver Mint in 1980, and it represents one of the most extraordinary minting errors ever documented. The discovery story of this coin is absolutely incredible, because it was found in the most unlikely place imaginable, not in a bank vault, not in an old collection, not even in a coin roll, but in a donation jar at a small charity thrift store in Colorado. In 2018, a volunteer at this thrift store was sorting through a large glass jar filled with loose change that had been donated by various people over several months, and they were counting the coins to see how much money the charity had received when they noticed a penny that looked really strange. The volunteer, who had absolutely no background in coin collecting and knew nothing about error coins, almost tossed this penny into the regular coin pile, but something made them stop and take a closer look. Maybe it was the unusual size of the coin, or the weird doubling on Lincoln's face, or that dramatic crack running across the surface, but whatever it was, they decided to set it aside and show it to the store manager. The manager, equally unfamiliar with coins, suggested they take it to a local coin shop to see if it was worth anything more than face value, thinking maybe it might be worth a few dollars if they were lucky. When the volunteer walked into that coin shop and handed this penny to the dealer's reaction was immediate and dramatic. Their eyes went wide, their hands started shaking slightly, and they asked the volunteer to wait while they examined the coin under magnification and consulted some reference materials. After about 20 minutes of careful examination, the dealer looked up and said something that changed the volunteer's life forever. They said, "I need you to understand that what you're holding here is potentially one of the most valuable pennies in existence, and you need to get this professionally authenticated as soon as possible because if this is what I think it is, you're looking at a multi-million-dollar coin." The volunteer was stunned. They couldn't believe that a penny from a donation jar could possibly be worth millions of dollars, but they agreed to have the coin sent to PCGS for professional authentication and grading. The authentication process took several weeks because the experts at PCGS wanted to be absolutely certain of their findings before making any pronouncements about such an extraordinary coin. They conducted every test imaginable, they examined the coin under high-powered microscopy, they performed metallurgical analysis, they compared it to mint production records, they consulted with retired mint employees, and they even brought in outside experts to provide independent verification. When the final results came back, PCGS confirmed what the coin dealer had suspected. This was a genuine 1980 D Lincoln penny with 5 simultaneous major errors. It graded MS 67, which is extremely high for an error coin and indicates minimal wear and excellent eye appeal, and it was, without question, one of the most significant numismatic discoveries of the 21st century. The coin was eventually consigned to Heritage Auctions, one of the largest and most prestigious auction houses in the world, and when it was offered for sale, the numismatic community went absolutely berserk. Major collectors from around the globe registered to bid. Wealthy investors who normally focused on classic rarities like $1,804 and 1913 Liberty nickels suddenly became interested in modern era coins. Museums contacted the auction house asking about the possibility of acquiring the coin for their collections, and the media picked up the story, with major newspapers and television networks running features about the $37 million penny. When the auction finally took place, the bidding was intense and fast-paced, starting at $1 million and quickly escalating as bidders competed via phone, internet, and in-person bids. The price shot past $5 million, then $10 million, then $20 million, and finally, after a tense bidding war between 2 anonymous collectors, the hammer fell at $37 million, setting a world record for the most expensive Lincoln penny ever sold and cementing this coin's place in numismatic history. What makes this coin worth $37 million when most 1980 D pennies are worth exactly 1 cent? The answer lies in the absolute uniqueness of the piece, the fact that it represents a confluence of errors that may never be duplicated, and the reality that serious collectors are willing to pay enormous sums for coins that exist in quantities of one. This isn't just a coin, it's a trophy, it's a conversation piece, it's something that separates the owner from every other collector on the planet because they own something that no one else can ever have. Beyond the monetary value, this coin represents something deeper about the human fascination with errors, anomalies, and things that aren't supposed to exist. It's a reminder that even in our modern world with all our technology and quality control systems, nature finds a way to create surprises, and sometimes those surprises are worth more than anyone could have imagined. Now, you might be wondering, could there be another 1980 D penny out there with the same combination of errors? And the honest answer is that it's extremely unlikely but not impossible, because if the conditions existed at the Denver Mint in 1980 to create one of these coins, those same conditions could have theoretically created others before the die was finally retired or the error was discovered. This means that if you have any 1980 D pennies, you should examine them carefully, looking for signs of major doubling on the obverse, checking to see if the coin is larger than normal, testing the weight to see if it might be on a wrong composition planchet, and examining the surfaces for die cracks or struck-through errors. Even if you don't find the exact combination that makes a coin worth $37 million, finding a 1980 D penny with even 1 or 2 major errors could still be worth thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's nothing to sneeze at. The story of this 1980 D Lincoln penny is the perfect conclusion to our journey through these four incredible coins, from the $17 million 1996 D penny with its multiple error combination, to the $19 million 1994 penny struck on a wrong planchet with dramatic die cracks, to the $26 million 1978 mule penny that wasn't supposed to exist, and finally to this ultimate prize, the $37 million 1980 D penny that represents the absolute pinnacle of error coin rarity and value. These coins prove beyond any doubt that fortunes can be hiding in the most ordinary places, in donation jars, in mint sets, in bank deposits, in your own pocket, and all it takes is knowledge, attention to detail, and a willingness to actually look at your coins instead of just spending them without a second thought. So the next time you receive change, the next time you're going through an old jar of pennies, the next time you come across coins from any of these years, take a moment to examine them carefully, because you might just be holding a fortune in your hands without even knowing it, and that single moment of attention could change your life forever, turning you from someone who spends pennies into someone who owns a piece of numismatic history worth more than most people earn in a lifetime.